A little after 7 on a summer morning, a farmer named Sergei Semenov sat on the porch of a Siberian trading post when the northern sky tore open into a sheet of fire brighter than the sun. The heat scorched him where he sat, and a wall of air threw him off the porch and knocked him senseless. When he came round, the windows were shattered, and across the forest the sky was burning. He was 65 kilometers from where it happened. It looks like the start of a war, but the strangest thing about that morning is not what it destroyed. It is that whatever flattened 80 million trees never touched the ground and left no crater at all. So why, when something falls from the sky and crushes a forest the size of a city, does the human mind reach first for curses, weapons, and aliens, and only last for the truth? This was central Siberia in the summer of 1908, the last tired years of Tsar Nicholas II, a land of swamp and pine and reindeer where the nearest railway lay hundreds of kilometers away, and almost no one with scientific training would ever see what happened. So an explosion powerful enough to level a great city went off over the Podkamennaya Tunguska River with nobody there to measure it, and for years the world barely knew anything had occurred. The people who were there saw it for only seconds. Hunters along the river looked up to a bluish-white object streaking low across the sky, some remembering a second sun, others a pillar of fire trailing smoke, and then high above the taiga, it detonated. The blast went off in the air, not on the ground, and its shock wave raced outward faster than sound, pressing the forest flat in a vast circle, 80 million trees thrown down in one instant, every broken trunk pointing away from a single spot overhead. Reindeer were flung burning across the moss. Roofs caved in, and people were knocked off their feet while windows burst in towns that never saw the flash. And here the story turns strange, because the taiga lay shattered with no crater to photograph, no smoke above a city, no telegraph wire out of that swamp to carry the news. So the first sign the world received came from an unexpected direction. In the nights that followed, the skies over Europe began to glow, and people in London could read a newspaper outdoors at midnight with no lamp. Instruments across Russia and Britain traced a wave of pressure circling the globe, and seismographs marked a tremor like a small earthquake. So scientists knew that somewhere, something vast had exploded. But the signals carried no address, and no one could say where or what could have caused it. In Siberia, rumor outran every investigator. The Evenki, who herded reindeer across that land, spoke of Ogdi, a god of fire, come to punish the forest, while Russian settlers whispered of the end of the world. And the empire, still bleeding from a lost war with Japan and the failed revolution of 1905, had no appetite to send anyone into a mosquito-ridden bog to study a blast that had killed no one important. So the most violent thing to fall from the sky in living memory was left to the hunters and the wolves and folded slowly into legend. It took 19 years for science to arrive. Long after the World War and the Revolution had remade the map, a Soviet mineralogist named Leonid Kulik found catalog notes describing a huge Siberian explosion in 1908 and became certain a great iron meteorite lay buried in the taiga. He argued his way into funding from the Academy of Sciences, and in 1927 he and a small team forced their way into the Tunguska Basin on horseback and on foot, guided by Evenki hunters across flooded rivers and bog. Kulik expected what instinct expects after an explosion, a hole in the ground. What he found was stranger than any crater. Tens of kilometers of forest lay flat before him, every trunk pointing outward from one central point. A radial pattern later surveys would map in the rough shape of a butterfly's wings. And at the very center, directly beneath that point, the trees were not flung down at all. They stood upright, stripped of every branch, blackened and dead, a grove of what looked like telegraph poles where the heart of the blast should have been. Kulik searched the bogs for his meteorite, but found no crater and almost no fragments of anything. The harder he looked, the deeper the contradiction grew. A force that knocked down 80 million trees, yet left nothing he could hold in his hand. To a mind that expects every explosion to leave a hole, this felt impossible, and into that gap the welder ideas would later pour. But the scientists who kept returning went looking for things too small to see. They cored the peat bogs across the blast zone and found, in a thin layer laid down around 1908, Microscopic beads of metal and glass, rich in nickel and iridium, elements rare in Siberian soil but common in the rock that drifts between the planets. Something from space had been here, and it had not landed. It had come apart in the air and fallen as dust. That is the answer to the riddle that had haunted the place for half a century. When physicists modeled the energy needed to flatten that much forest and shake the planet, they found a blast of 10 to 15 megatons, hundreds of times the atomic bomb that would fall on Hiroshima nearly 4 decades later. An object perhaps 50 to 80 meters across had come in from space at 20 kilometers a second, and the air in front of it had not parted but piled up, crushing and heating it until 5 to 10 kilometers above the swamp, it tore itself apart in a single airburst. The body never reached the ground, which is why there is no crater. The blast fell straight down on the forest below, which is why the central trees were stripped where they stood. The dust drifted over a continent, which is why London glowed at midnight. Every strange thread led back to one quiet, terrible fact. The thing that did this answered to no one. No enemy aimed it, no God sent it, no genius built it. It was a rock nobody saw coming, doing to the earth exactly what the laws of motion demand, over the one corner of the world where almost no one was standing to die. It is worth being honest about the stories that grew before that answer settled. In the gap left by Cold War secrecy and unreachable Soviet data, popular writers filled the silence with marvels. That Nikola Tesla had fired a beam from his Wardenclyffe Tower in New York and set Siberia alight, or that an alien craft had blown itself up in the sky to avoid crashing into the planet. Set those beside the treefall maps, the nickel and iridium in the peat, and the physics of an airburst, and they fall apart. The real debate was always far narrower, a question of composition, not conspiracy. A stony asteroid, which the metal-rich dust favors, or a fragile splinter of comet. Because no large piece was ever recovered, that detail has never fully closed. So when we ask for the truth of Tunguska, what we honestly have is a most likely closure, not a confirmed one. The strongest evidence points to a medium-sized body from space, probably a stony asteroid and possibly a piece of a comet that exploded several kilometers above the taiga on the morning of the 30th of June, 1908, releasing the energy of many nuclear weapons and flattening a forest without ever leaving a crater. It was not a weapon, not a craft, not a beam. It was something far more ordinary on the scale of the solar system, and far more unsettling for it. After Kulik, the forest grew back over the fallen trunks. The death toll, which early rumor put in the thousands, is now thought to have been very small, a few people and a great many reindeer, spared only because the blast happened high in the air over one of the emptiest places on Earth. Then in 2013, Tunguska stopped being only history. A far smaller rock exploded without warning over the Russian city of Chelyabinsk, releasing about half a megaton and injuring some 1,500 people, almost all of them cut by flying glass as they ran to their windows to look at the light in the sky. Scientists reached at once for Tunguska as the measure of how much worse it could have been. What remains of 1908 is mostly written in wood and dust. From the air you can still trace the ghost of the blast, younger trees rising among the gray fallen trunks that lie, even now, in their long radial lines, and in laboratories there are still the peat cores and the tiny nickel spheres that fell from the sky. The forest has healed, but it has not forgotten the shape of what hit it. And that, in the end, is why Tunguska holds on to us. The human mind would far rather believe in agency than accident, in patterns than randomness, in something that meant to do this than in a trajectory and a number, which is why a forest flattened into a perfect wheel can look so much like a deliberate strike, and why people reached for gods and geniuses and aliens for decades before they could accept an invisible stone that exploded before anyone saw it arrive. The hardest truth of that morning is not that something destroyed 80 million trees, it is that nothing intended to. You live on a small world that moves every day through the leftover rubble of how the planets were made, and your sky can usually shield you, but not always, and not forever, and once in a great while, a rock that no telescope caught will release the energy of a war over a place where, by pure luck, no one happens to be. In 1908, that place was a Siberian swamp, where the forest still grows in strange rings to this day, round the spot where the sky exploded and left no crater behind. If a story like this stays with you, subscribe to Bizarre Minds, and I will keep bringing you the strangest things that ever really happened. The world is far stranger than it lets on.